Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome back to the Rutgers Rant, soon to be renamed the Schianoville Podcast. I wonder if we can actually get that done. Can we get it called? Can we get it renamed again? They got so angry when we did it the first time, but clearly the Rising from the Ashes, or whatever it was before, is no longer a good name.
if we know one thing about Greg Schiano, he does have pretty good lawyers. I think he would fight us tooth and nail as far as using his name and a likeness. So I think we might lose that battle.
That's probably a good point. All right. Anybody, welcome back. Obviously, you know, the Greg Schiano news is still the major topic surrounding this program. To quote the great Judge Elihu Smales, well, we're waiting. So what's going on? I get it that we are in a society that expects everything to happen immediately. There was a meeting last Tuesday. We reported on that meeting that he had significant demands. We got through Thursday where we had, they had another meeting, the Board of Governors Athletic Committee, where they agreed to meet those demands. It is now Monday. Sarge, what's your sense?
Yeah, I think we know from the Rutgers perspective, I think they're all in. I mean, I think they've, the top decision makers, I think, want Greg Schiano. They want him to be the coach. All we've heard coming out of that meeting was whatever it takes, go get it done. And I think that's from one side. I think the other side, talking about Greg Schiano, I think we have not heard anything as far as, him being committed, him, being sold. And I think, part of it might be, he wants, everything in writing. He's been burned before with the Tennessee thing. And I think he wants to, have his agent, his lawyers look at, look at the offer. But I think that's where we stand right now. I think, I'm a little surprised that it's gone into this week, considering, most of the Rutgers officials who we deal with, they've all kind of expressed a desire to have this done. And now we're Monday, and I think we're still waiting.
Yeah, I'm not, I wouldn't get to the level that anyone should be concerned yet. Put it that way. I think that, it's still, and someone said this to me, and someone in the Schiano camp pointed out that, what's the hurry in the sense that, well, really there's not a lot that he can do between now and the end until the end of November in an official capacity. There's a lot of things he could even be doing in the unofficial capacity behind the scenes that it'd be easier to do than if he were introduced as head coach. That said, I do think, though, that there becomes a point, Kratz. I mean, don't you agree? There comes a point where they need to get this wrapped up because the uncertainty, if it drags into later this week, early next week, then you start to wonder, okay, well, what is going on here?
No, definitely. I mean, I think obviously you're going to play Ohio State this week. It's going to go very poorly. But then next week you've got your last home game. It's Michigan State, which suddenly might be a competitive game. Michigan State may have just quit at this point. You're going to honor Eric LeGrand, obviously. So that's, someone Greg is very close with. This 150th celebration thing. And I think last week, my guess is that in hindsight, there was a lot of people who were maybe, very optimistic it would get done so they could have it be part of the big celebration. But maybe now that the celebration is past, that moment is gone. Maybe you're right. It gets more of a, what's the rush? But, jobs are going to open up across the country. And, you don't know. Greg could suddenly become a contender in other jobs. And then it gets, you're already basically meeting, these high demands. Well, he could come back and say, I want more. So I think if you're Rutgers, you really want to get it done sooner rather than later, just because you are running out of times to kind of capitalize on the momentum during what is a lost season.
Right. This week still makes a lot of sense to me, just because of the idea that, and it still could happen. I mean, we know they have to have 48 hours notice for the Board of Governors to have a meeting. That means if they wanted to do it Thursday or Friday, they could announce they're having a meeting tomorrow, and we would be ready to go Thursday or Friday. That hasn't happened yet. just to get it getting out ahead of the Ohio State game to me, to change the narrative of the program when this is going to be, we're going to talk about it in a minute, obviously, but this could be a really historic kind of defeat, and then also give BTN a full 3 hours to talk about nothing but Schiano's return. He could be in the broadcast booth. There could be a lot of things that make sense in that line. I guess it's certainly not a necessity, Sarge, but, given all that's going on behind the scenes, is your sense that people are prepared to do this now, or is there more, is giving him what he wants? And we talked about a lot, the facilities, all the demands, the assistant pool, is that just simply taking more time than maybe we thought it would?
If I sound distracted, it's because every time my phone buzzes, I keep on waiting for So I guess, the way it was put to me is the contract, no matter what, he's going to want to have everything in writing. And maybe I'm naive. I don't work under a contract. I've seen these contracts that the coaches sign, and they're expansive documents. So maybe it's something as simple as his attorneys are reviewing it, and maybe once that happens, then he's going to sign off and be committed. But from everything that everyone says, Rutgers officials have basically said they don't like the word demands. Greg Schiano making all these demands, because their whole point is they were going to do this anyway. Pat Hobbs has told me in the past. We've written stories in the last 6 months that Pat Hobbs has wanted to do a field house. Whoever the coach is going to have input. If Chris Ash was still here, he would have had input on the building of a field house or the football facility or whatever they do. Whoever the coach is, whether it's Greg Schiano or whoever the next coach, will have input. So this is all stuff that Pat Hobbs has openly talked about, and is stuff that Rutgers officials want to get done. So as far as everything else, coaching salary pool and all the other stuff, we've heard time and time again that they're willing to spend over $4 million. So I can't really see, as far as from the demand from the his desires, that's a big holdup. Maybe it's something as simple as the document is expansive, and he wants his attorneys and his agent to fine tooth comb it.
Right. And maybe that's just the timing, and exactly. It takes a while. And again, there is no need to be in a rush. It's us and everybody else that just want it done for closure. I'm going to throw out the doomsday scenario, guys. I hesitate to do this because Rutgers fans are a fragile bunch as it is, but here goes. Doomsday scenario. Boston College lost to Florida State over the weekend. A bad Florida State team drops to 5-5. They have a week off. Then they've got Notre Dame and at Pittsburgh. That could be 2 more losses. You would think that at 5-7, Steve Addazio is going to get fired up there. Cratch, which job do you think is better, Boston College or Rutgers, if you're a coaching candidate right now?
It's a great question. I would say I think Rutgers is better. Ooh. Just because...
not winning right away better, but better overall in the conference?
If you're Greg Schiano, and you're getting all these infrastructure... I would assume Greg is probably going to get paid more here than he would at BC. I think it's a very interesting comparison, because I think BC is a tougher school probably to recruit to. I know that we think about, the way BC has had all this success in New Jersey. Well, I think it's kind of been a unique situation in that they're a Catholic university, one of only 2, Division I Catholic universities playing football that has been able to hit, the parochial schools in North Jersey hard, and they had a Campanelli on staff.
Yeah.
And obviously Greg would continue to have success recruiting New Jersey if he were to take the BC job, but I don't know if BC has as much national appeal. I'm not saying Rutgers has a lot of national appeal right now, but if it were to be built up to the point where it is, you're in the ACC, it's a tough division. You got to deal with Clemson. Obviously you have to deal with the big boys in the Big Ten too. I think it comes down to, I think ultimately, coach, how much do you want to be paid? And I think how the comfort level, because you coach at BC, you're not going to have to deal with the same amount of scrutiny that the head coach at Rutgers is going to have to deal with.
Right, absolutely. All right. So again, this is no information. I just a doomsday, just something that popped. You looked at that schedule. You think about an Eastern coach, East Coast guy. Sarge, do you buy into that idea, or am I just talking out of my what as usual?
No, I do. I mean, I'm taking a couple of steps further. Where was Greg Schiano most recently? He was in New England. So, I mean, it's not like, he doesn't have, he's clearly, it's not a place where he wouldn't mind living. I don't think. And it's a place where he can get Jersey recruits. He can get, still tap into New York, his recruiting turf that's made him successful everywhere he's been. I don't think it's I would argue with Cratch on one perspective. Yeah, Clemson is now rolling, and they're always going to be a thorn in their side. But beyond that, I mean, if we're talking 8-4, 9-3, and that level, Boston College is way more. First off, Adazio is recruited pretty well. They go 7-5 every year. It's not unrealistic that the next coach is going to be able to come in with the talent and what's already been built and be able to take it to the next level. To go from 7-5 to 8-4, 9-3, 10-2 is not an unrealistic jump. It's way harder to go from 2-10 to 4-8, bowl game in year 2, year 3. And, I think a lot of fans will have patience with Greg Schiano, but he knows the landscape better than anyone. That after 3 years, people are going to be clamoring to get back to bowl games.
Of course. All right. Gun to your head. I'm going to put the odds right now. The percentage that Greg Schiano is introduced as Rutgers coach sometime soon. I say it's still, this is a good Card Sharks thing. Remember, you have to go higher or lower. I still think it's 86%. Sarge, are you going higher or lower than that?
The world's waiting, Sarge.
Yeah, really? Did he die? Maybe the stress of this killed him finally. No, I hear noise. It's quite possible that Sarge has died on the call. That's a shame. Well, what do you think, Cratch? Give me your number.
You said 86. I will go. I think it's a perfect number. 86%.
86%. Okay. All right, Sarge, you're alive. You back?
I'm back.
Okay.
I was returning a text message. It was not the answer, by the way.
Okay. So, great. You got to stop.
It was actually my wife putting in her grocery list.
That's perfect. Oh, great. I hope you're going shopping. What does she need?
That's probably for a discussion for a different podcast. I will go higher.
Higher than 86%. Okay.
Yes,
great.
I will go higher.
Can I just throw out one last thing about the doomsday scenario? Even let's say Schiano, obviously none of us are inside his head, thought BC was a better job than Rutgers. I don't think it's a guarantee that BC is going to want to go from one, East Coast tough guy football.
That's a great point. Yeah.
To another.
Yeah. Yep.
They might want some offensive whiz kid, and there's a whole litany of them to choose from around the country. So that's also something to keep in mind. Maybe calm Rutgers fans down a little bit as they get
a less expensive guy on the way up, and that might be where you get a Jeff Hafley or a guy who is a hotshot assistant in the big program. That's a great point. All right. Before I start talking about Card Sharks again, I have an idea of what we can do to distract us from this. How about we talk about a football game? There's actually one football game this week. Ohio State coming here to Piscataway. The spread is remarkable, 51.5 points, which is the largest spread in a Big Ten game. But I think what's more remarkable is the over-under is 55. I don't know how I've never seen anything like that. I'm not exactly, the guy sitting there in the casino all the time, but that just seems crazy. What is your sense, Cratch, as to how the program, how Nunzio, how everyone is kind of looking at what's going to happen here this weekend?
Well, I think there's certainly, going into this eyes wide open. Like, I don't think Nunzio thinks he's going to win the game. They're not trying to pull that, on any given Saturday. It's still 100 yards, boys. Like, no, I think they're very cognizant of the fact that this is not going to end well in their favor on the scoreboard on Saturday. I think they're just taking is, look, you're in the Big Ten. This is the best team in the country, arguably. This is a chance to go out there and try to grow as a player and as a program and put good stuff on tape. We'll see how you mentioned the line. The last 3 games, Rutgers Ohio State games, the Scarlet Knights have been outscored 166-3, and Ohio State has covered the 51 point line. I think it is right now, the biggest point spread in Big Ten intra-conference history. They've covered it twice in the last 3 games, This is going to be pretty cringeworthy.
Especially when you see what Ohio State did to Maryland, and that was just, 73-14. Some of the numbers are just ridiculous.
They beat Indiana 51-10.
Yeah, I know. It's just, it's amazing. Sorry. Are we headed toward a 73-14, or do you think, because of the respect that they might have for this program a little bit more than Maryland, based on some of the stories I saw out there, that Jason Day is going to try to dial it down? Can he dial it down? Ryan. Can he dial it down?
Ryan Day.
Jason Day plays golf.
Yeah, Jason Day plays golf now.
Jason Day would definitely run it up if he could, but Ryan Day is a different story. What do you think?
No, I've said it all along. I think there's a feeling that that Ryan Day might need to deal with Nunzio. If Nunzio does go back to high school, or if that. I think there's more of a respect level between Ohio State and Rutgers, and I don't see them running it up in the fourth quarter. I think, based on some of the conversations I've had, it sounds like there was no love lost with Ohio State and Maryland this past week. There were some stories that popped out that Ohio State suspected Maryland of possibly turning in Chase Young to the NCAA, which has caused Chase Young to their star defensive end to get suspended. So if that's the case, then you could certainly see the scenario where Ohio State was not going to dial it down against Maryland. I don't see it happening this week. I thought the more interesting thing with the over was the over-under. It was 55.5, I think it started off at, and the point spread was at 50.5. That means Vegas doesn't expect Rutgers to score a touchdown. So
I know.
Yeah, in some respects, I think we could see a 56-7 game. Rutgers covers, but obviously it was still a blowout.
Right.
Do you expect him to score a touchdown?
Yeah, no, not really. No. But the ball bounces and this kid picks it up. Who knows?
Exactly.
All right, let's dive into true or false. You know how it works. First one, true or false? This rebuild will be more difficult for Greg Schiano than the first one. James Cratch, true or false?
False.
Sarge?
False.
I'm coming back to this one because I've got an interesting stat on it later. All right, true or false? Greg Schiano's arrival would be bad news for Rutgers basketball. Cratch, true or false?
False.
Sarge?
False.
Okay, contradicting some content I've read on other websites. True or false? Rutgers does not need a new football facility, and to spend more than $100 million on it is crazy. Cratch, true or false?
True.
Oh, good. I like that. All right, Sarge?
That's a great question. I'll say true.
Right? True or false? Ohio State is going to try to score 60 on Rutgers. Cratch?
False. I think they will, but I don't know if there's going to try involved.
Right. Sarge?
False.
Okay, well, the next one is Ohio State is going to score 60 without trying. Cratch, we know your answer. Sarge, your answer?
True.
True. True or false? It's a conference game. There is no running up the score. Cratch, true or false?
False.
Sarge?
False.
Okay. And finally, true or false? Rutgers will never beat Ohio State in my lifetime. I'm 46 years old, as you know, a problem drinker who does not have healthy habits whatsoever. So keep that in mind when you answer this. True or false, Cratch? In my lifetime, will Ohio State lose to Rutgers?
True. They will. Rutgers will beat Ohio State.
Will beat them. Okay, so false. The question was, will never beat them. Rutgers will beat them. Okay. Sarge?
the answer is true, and I expect you to live into your 90s.
Wow. That's good. God, I love optimism. It's about time someone says something nice to me.
Wait, how is that optimistic, by the way? I just said that Rutgers will never beat Ohio State.
Well, you said I would live into my 90s.
Okay.
I'd sign for that.
That's fair.
Good grief. If you so, jeez. Absolutely. That's wonderful. I'm still going to call my life insurance company right now and get an extension. All right. So I like the first one because you both said that you think that this rebuild will be less difficult than Schiano for the first time. And this is great. A guy named Bill Batey, a loyal reader, sent me these numbers that I hadn't added up. From the years 1996 to 2000, Rutgers compiled a record of 11-44, which is a winning percentage of 200. Figuring that Rutgers will lose the last 3 games, the record for the last 5 years will be 13-47, which is a winning percentage of 216 or so, about 21%. So nearly identical, which is kind of amazing when you think about it. I mean, I guess it'll be easier in some ways because the facilities in a large part are here and there's a different level of commitment. But, I mean, talent in the program and proof on the field, it certainly looks like it's going to be about the same. Why do you disagree with that, Cratch?
I just think transfer portal, Big Ten affiliation, more commitment. And I think, honestly, as I've always said, I think that a lot of times, a lot of these games, the talent level is not this massive disparity. Obviously, it is on this Saturday, it will be. But other, Maryland, Indiana, Illinois, even, it's not that big of a gap. And I just think that in 3 years, if they do everything right, they should be able to go 6-6. And I think that makes it a lot easier for Schiano to kind of rebuild than when he was in year 5 and he still hadn't gone to a bowl.
Sarge, you agree?
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think that from I would disagree with the one thing. I don't think that they have even come close to having a equal talent to any Big Ten team that they've faced this year. Even Illinois, we've seen. I would disagree with that standpoint. From a talent standpoint, he's inheriting a mess. But I do think that from the transfer portal and the resources standpoint, this is not what he inherited back in 2000, 2001. They have better facilities. There's more of a commitment. I think that he's going to want to use all of that to his favor, and I think he'll be able to get an infusion of talent.
And we'll say this: it was described to me at one point that program when he first came in here, that there was one legitimate big time college football player, and it was LJ Smith. Otherwise, there was just no one on the roster. That's a different story now. They do have some players, but it's just it isn't. I really don't think it's that far off from where it was just on talent wise. Everything else, I agree with you. But it's just going to be interesting to see how quickly you can rebuild that roster. All right. So, Sarge, you do not think they need to build the football facility? You think that what they have now with the field house would be enough?
I think everything that they've done to this point, with the addition of the Rodkin Center, that whole thing was done with the idea of moving everything out of the health center. I'm talking of the academics. They have, the third floor is dedicated to academics. You have the 2 soccer programs and 2 lacrosse programs are in there now. They'll move tennis out presumably as well. So then the health center is all football. To me, you renovate the health center. I get it. I mean, even the parking lot. I was, when I pulled into the parking lot today, it's just one of those things. No one thinks about the parking lot, but the parking lot needs to be completely repaved. It's just ugly. The sidewalks. We're talking, a new facade of the health center. The look of the health center is old, but so you're probably talking about a complete renovation. But I don't think you need to completely knock it down and build a new building over by the bubble. I think you can make the health center work.
I guess I just think, why would you invest money in something that's going to already be subpar the moment it's done? Like, at least the basketball facility, it opens and you're like, okay, this is as good as anybody else has, right? Kratz, I guess you agree with me that if you're going to do something, you're going to invest even $10 million in sprucing up the health center. Why not throw that money at a new place? I mean, is that where you're coming from?
I mean, I just think it's difficult, and I think this might be one of the reasons why it's just taking long, is that, I said it the other week, you don't, major, Greg Schiano and Brown don't build a $4 million locker room that they think is going to get bulldozed in 18 months, and they're planning to do like a players lounge in the Hale Center. And, granted, it's not, that stuff can still be used for game day, but that's a lot of money to spend on a thing that's used 12, 13 days a year. So, all right. I joked with a couple of boosters and said, "Yay, you think the Rodkins are open for a change of plans? Like could you turn this into the football / academic center and add a field house off to the side?" I don't think that's going to happen, obviously. So my big question is, okay, so where are you going to put the Death Star now? Are you going to just blow up the Hale Center and rebuild it out?
There's a lot of land over there. I will say that. They have some land. There's a lot of land over there.
There's some land, are you going to take away, like, for instance, the Battaglia practice complex? The far field is a turf field. You guys would know more, you around longer than I have. I never once have seen Chris Asher and Nunzio Campanelli use that field for practice. I believe, cross programs, other programs practice on that field. So, are you going to put the indoor there? Are you going to put it by the bubble? Another thing is if you're going to have this beautiful state-of-the-art, football palace, or whatever one of you guys called it, with an indoor facility, like, are they going to just want to practice inside all day, every day?
No.
So I think there's a lot of questions that have to be answered about the new facility.
Yes, they are.
I understand the Hale Center has its complications, but I think it's just we said it. Sarge mentioned earlier in the show, Pat Hobbs has talked about, on the record about building a field house, but I think the plan has always been they were just going to build a big barn that held a turf field.
Right.
Not that they were going to bring the whole operation into a new place.
All right, let's dive into the podcast questions, the Rutgers Insider questions. And of course, you guys know all about our Rutgers Insider. It's never been, keep on adding new subscribers each month. We have a $4.99. You get texts from us all day long with inside information and discussions about what's going on. So go to NJ.com /text and sign up there. A lot of questions, obviously, on the coaching situation. Here's one. Do you really think Greg Schiano is going to get $3 million plus per year? It's hard for me to believe that he wants $3 million plus and millions for the staff and a field house and a new Hale Center. Sarge, my answer to that is it's just the going rate. I don't know what I mean. Yeah, I think he's going to get much more than that. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be. I mentioned 4 earlier. I think it'll escalate, but everything that I've heard is he's way more focused on the assistant salary pool. I think that's a greater concern. Look, I don't think he's going to take $2 million. I don't think he's going to take what Chris Ash made. So I would think that it'll be over 3, but I don't think it's going to be 5. So somewhere I think in the 3.5 to $4 million range, I think it will probably be where the number's at.
And the follow-up question obviously is 6, 7, 8 years. What's your guess?
Probably 7 years.
7. Wow. All right. Here's another one. Who are some of the names you believe Schiano, if hired, will surround himself with OC, DC, and other assistants? And do you realistically see any of PJ Fleck's assistants leaving, quote, the boat in Minnesota for New Jersey? Cratch? Obviously, there's a bunch of guys on that name. We've gone through names before. Do you think would he be able to pluck some of those guys off? Or would he want to pluck some of those guys off from PJ staff?
I think he may. It's going to be a lot tougher because obviously PJ got his big extension last week, and part of that deal is that I think it's $1.25 million in the next 2 years, including like $1.05 million in 2020, going into the assistant pool to give raises to his guys. I think I look at that stat. I think defensive line has been a massive issue for Rutgers. That's something they have to get better in the trenches. So I think Jim Panagos would be the top guy that you would want to pluck off that staff. Joe Rossi is going to be in demand as defensive coordinator. Shiraka, a lot of those guys, not going to list all of them that are there. I think Anthony Campanelli at Michigan obviously would be at the top of the list. Some other guys. I know people keep on asking about Jeff Hafley. I just don't see – I would be really surprised if that's realistic because he's a guy who is making $1 million already and is probably going to be a head coaching candidate elsewhere. I think he'd be really hard for Greg to kind of pluck here And he'd probably only be here for a year, and then he'd probably be a head coach somewhere.
Right. All right. Here's one that goes back to the point in the true or false. I understand the basketball team is in pretty good shape right now with the coach and the new APC. But the last time Schiano was hired, it seemed like all of the athletic department's resources went to football and the other programs were forgotten about and went into a long decline. Do you think it'll be different this time around? And this was obviously a good friend, Jerry Carino, wrote a column wondering that same thing. So did Dave White Sarge, I just feel like you've got a coach who you love, who's signed through 2022, 2023, and you've got a building now that is as good as anywhere. I mean, what can they do? They can't steal the basketballs. I mean, I get that maybe rack renovations might be postponed. And what do you think? Is there anything that can happen to the basketball program now that will be bad under Greg Schiano?
Yeah, if they hadn't already built this already, then it might be more of a reason for concern. But here's the thing. When football is bad, which they've been historically bad for the last 3 years, when they're historically bad, it's not good for anything. It's not good for the women's soccer team. Just went to the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament. They were going back to the NCAA tournament. It's not good for anyone to be taught. Ask Scott Goodell. Like he's not. Football needs to figure it out. And Steve Peichel would be the first one to say it. Like if football is more of an attraction, then it helps his recruiting. So. Of course, you're going to have to put the facilities and invest and put football at the top of the list. Every school, every Power 5 school in the country, will point that way. To me, if the RWJ wasn't already built, then I guess it would be an issue. But it's there now, and outside of maybe an assistant coach, but look, Steve Peichel has a lot of equity. The donors love him. If Steve Peichel needs to get some more resources, he can make a phone call.
And I would be more worried. And this is Steve Peichel's third year. We talked about it last week, Crash. But, I think a bigger problem for Steve Peichel would be a season that falls below expectations.
Yes, I definitely wholeheartedly agree. And look, we kind of saw it. I mean, now they bounced back against Niagara, but lackluster opening night effort against Bryant. And you already could see on social media the way the fan base was kind of like, well, that was bad. Like, that was not good. That's not promising, this and that. And obviously they're young, but you can't – it's the same thing with football. Like, you can only say they're young so long,
right, Right. This is kind of –
So I think, I think that's the biggest the men's basketball program should not be worried about Greg Schiano coming back. They should be worried about actually finishing with a winning record and getting to the NIT.
Totally agree. All right, this is an interesting one. I'm curious. The one thing I'm curious is relative to you guys. How accessible will Greg be, and how much exposure will he allow the team over the summer and during the weeks of the regular season with media? Ash didn't seem to give you and us much access. I'm hoping it's different. Sarge, I mean, you were there for Greg. He was very open with practices. I'm hoping, he's a little guarded with everything else. I'm hoping that changes. But, I mean, do you think that he will recognize the need to be the forward face of this thing? Or are we going to kind of go back to, 2001, 2002, 2003 approach? What do you think?
Yeah, two things about that. One, I don't think it'll be the way it was because it's not that way anywhere. So I think he's going to try to adopt a model where I think the access will be better. And when we talk about access, it's good for the fans. It's better for the fans to have press content and two reporters like Crash and I at practice every day and cranking out content. It's just good. Greg Schiano, since when he started at Rutgers, I covered those years. He used the media to his advantage in terms of recruiting. I would expect that to be the case again. Whether they have practice availability every day in some form, I think he'll try to make it year round. He understands that that to make himself available in June, July when even when they're not practicing, I think he would make himself available. I think he gets the media landscape better than anyone.
Yeah, and he has national media connections now through Ohio State and through the NFL, and I think that kind of stuff, it's going to be a national story if he does come back, and that'll go away eventually, but he still is familiar with that. One thing, Cratch, and I'm thinking about this in relative to this question, the thing that I liked a lot under Schiano, and you weren't here obviously, but you'll certainly understand where I'm coming from, is that I had better relationships with the players because they were available more often. They were available for longer periods of time. You could sit down and do a long feature on a guy, and a guy like Kasim Green or, Brian Leonard or all these players over the years that are such good representatives of the university while they were here. The people you want in front of us as much as possible were in front of us as much as possible. I hope that's something that changes. And I can imagine how it would impact your coverage if you had that.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I think at this point, I'm sure that Greg Schiano has to be aware of the current situation. And the current situation is a lot of days there's 1, 2, maybe 3 on a wild day, people at the open practice on Tuesday when the hour's open. There are a lot of times where I'm the only guy that interviews after practice, or me and WRSU or something like that. I mean, it's just the press corps is not very big. And I think that it's kind of a shame for a Big Ten program. So we can only hope. I mean, the one other thing I would really hope that Schiano will bring is, I think it's good for the fans and it's good for us, is an injury report. They have one at Ohio State. So his last stop, they had one. I know they used to have one here, because a lot of times, these things just fall, especially now when the team's struggling, things just fall through the cracks, and all of a sudden fans are kind of like, where's this kid? Where's this kid? Where's this kid? Well, that kid, hasn't been playing a lot, but he's been out for 3 weeks with a broken foot, but no one ever says anything, it just kind of falls through the cracks because it's just not a lot of attention or, a lot of access. So I would hope that he definitely would bring that back at the least.
All right. Thanks for the questions. They were great ones as always. NJ.com text, sign up, get your information directly from us. All right. Want to do a prediction? I mean, I guess we have to. Prediction, 50 points, 51.5 points. It's not been, what did you say? 166-3 is what it had been against Ohio State. And then of course this year it's what, 240. How many, what's the current against Big Ten? Whatever the numbers are, they're not good.
It's not good.
Cratch, what are you picking for this game?
I am going to pick here. I'll pull it up. 245-24 so far.
All right. That's bad.
And I just want to say, Ohio State has only allowed 77 points total this year.
Jesus.
Lowest in the nation. Yes.
All right.
I will go Buckeyes 65, Scarlet Knights 0.
Okay. Breaking in the 60s. Would that be running? I guess it depends what happens, but would that be running up the score? I guess probably not. Sarge, what do you got?
Yeah, I'll go with the score I went earlier, 56-7. I guess that would be a Rutgers cover. I think that you somehow find a way to score a touchdown, and in a lot of ways that'll be a win for them. I don't see Ohio State running it up, so I think 56-7 seems about right to me.
All right, I think we're going to be sitting there early in the fourth quarter wondering, right on that number, it's going to be like 49-0, and we're going to wonder if they're going to punt off, if they're going to run into the line. Let's get something like that's going to happen. But I do think they will cover. I am not optimistic about the 7. I'm going to stop short of the 60s. I'm going to go 56-0. All right. Anything else we want to talk about? We talked about hoops briefly. We talked about women's soccer briefly. Any final thoughts, Cratch? What do you got?
No, we were remiss to mention the other day, women's volleyball won 2 Big Ten matches this year, I believe, so far. So that's big for them. Obviously, 199. Yes. So they're making progress there. Arella Garantes, I believe, was Big Ten Player of the Week for the women's basketball team. They're off to a 2-0 start. Wrestling had a successful weekend, kind of wrestling unattached at 2 tournaments. Beat some ranked kids. A couple of kids won their pools at the title, so they're going to have their first real kind of dual meet action this coming weekend. A little West Coast swing at Fresno State and Cal State Bakersfield. Hoops going to Toronto on Saturday, but they've got Drexel at home on Wednesday.
Drexel,
I think it's around
Drexel
the world.
Good? No?
Yeah.
Drexel good? No. Yeah.
The Big Six. I know they're not part of the Big Five, so Big Six. I could see them being a little bit of a test. Maybe give Rutgers a push for a first half or so.
Every year they've lost one of these games, so until they lose a game like this one at home, they almost lost some ground. Almost, but still at least they haven't lost it yet. So that's a good point. Cratch, I'm sorry, Sarge. What else? You got anything else before you go out to the grocery store? I don't want to keep you from your honey-do list here. What else do you have?
No, I'm just waiting like everyone else for a resolution, and hopefully that comes, before you start cashing in those life insurance checks at the age 90.
90. When we sign on for this podcast next week, Sarge, are we going to be talking about having seen a press conference or no? What's your thought?
Yes, I think so, but I don't hold me to it.
Oh, I'm going to hold you to it, of course. The first thing I say. All right, signing off. Thanks for listening, as always, everyone. Steve Politi, James Kratz, Keith Sargent. Until next time.